Areena.
This week we ask why foreign nationals may face discrimination in Finland's jobs market, and we also look at some measures that can help to improve their chances of finding work. Hello and welcome once again to All Points North. I'm Ronan Browne, and this week I'm going to be talking about jobs, or more specifically about how to get one in Finland. And maybe I could be even more specific. It's about how to get a job as a foreigner in Finland. Because this is of course a topic we have covered a few times before on All Points North, and it's a subject that's often in the headlines and I think very much on people's minds. Especially now, because these are not easy times for job seekers. Finland's unemployment rate climbed to nearly 9% in the final quarter of last year, and the number of positions being advertised by employers has more than halved over the past 12 months. So it's already a tough environment in which to find a job, and then a research study published earlier this week showed that it can be even tougher for people who don't have a Finnish-sounding name. The study was conducted by researcher Aklak Ahmad, who is a docent of sociology at the University of Helsinki. So last year he sent out about 10,000 fictitious job applications to positions that were publicly advertised by Finland's network of TE or TE offices. So, for example, he might have sent in 5 applications for the same job, and each of the applicants were more or less equally qualified, with the main difference being that their names sounded either Finnish, English, Russian, Iraqi or Somali. And the results were quite interesting because they showed that an applicant was twice as likely to get called for an interview if they had a Finnish name than if they had an Iraqi or Somali sounding name, more than twice as likely in fact. So this strongly suggests that Finnish employers are putting people's job applications straight into the bin based first and foremost on their name. So this week I had a chat with Aisha Manai. She is the CEO of the Startup Refugees NGO. Now, although the name Startup Refugees suggests that the organisation only helps refugees and only to start up new companies, they actually help all migrants who have moved to Finland to find work, whether it's via self-employment or employment. And Aisha is an expert on the prejudices and the hurdles that people face when they move to Finland and don't have a Finnish name. So I asked her why she thinks this discrimination is happening.
I think Finnish people are sometimes they're afraid, they're prejudiced, sometimes they're blatantly racist. And due to those attitudes, they shut the door in front of people who otherwise would have been able to give so much potential and so much excellent input into the companies, into Finnish work life, into Finnish society.
Now, we will hear more from Aisha later in the show. But getting back to the research study and its results, we wrote about the findings in an article on Yle News headlined, "What's in a Name? Study confirms foreigners face persistent discrimination in Finnish jobs market." And as you might imagine, there was a huge reaction to the results from people who had similar tales to tell. And to help bring this debate to life in the podcast, and because I'm on my own this week, we brought in an AI tool to help us out. So the following audio comes from a text-to-voice application, but the words themselves were written by our readers in response to the article.
I can totally relate to this. I'm highly qualified and was working with a Big Four back home before moving to Finland to be with my partner. Honestly, it's been nothing short of a nightmare. I really thought it would be much easier than this. My resume is great, and I take the time to tailor it for every job I apply to. I have plenty of transferable skills that make it easy to switch industries, but somehow, there are always more suitable candidates.
5 years in Finland, and I've been told 3 times to change my name to get a job. Imagine that, my name is enough to make me invisible here. In a country crying out for skilled labor, the solution is apparently not fixing bias, but asking people to erase their identity. What's in a name? Apparently, the difference between being seen as qualified or not. Finland talks about diversity and its labor shortage, but seems determined to make it harder for itself. How does excluding people with the skills and experience it desperately needs help Finland compete on the world stage?
Now, they are just two examples of the many comments we received in reaction to this story, and I think a lot of people listening to this episode may have first-hand experience of how difficult it can be to get a job in Finland, especially as a non-Finn, or even as a Finn, but with a name that sounds a bit non-Finn. So this week I wanted to look at a few of the practical steps people can take to at least improve their chances of getting a job. And I also wanted to find out what Finnish employers and the Finnish government might do to tackle this problem. And one of the people I spoke to this week was Ricardo Gutierrez. He worked as a lawyer in his native Mexico, but decided he would take a completely different career path when he realised that profession was not going to provide him with a stable income in Finland. Here is Ricardo explaining the reason behind his decision.
So it was like 3 years working in different areas.
Okay.
All the time was with this määräaikainen sopimus, like
Fixed term contracts.
yes.
Yeah.
And some of them was 4 months long. So it was pretty difficult time because I had already 2 kids back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
So it was pretty nervous because sometimes I get to know if I get the next contract like 1 week before it's finished.
Okay.
Of course, I was looking for a job all the time,
Yeah.
applying everywhere, like all the government offices and all kind of things. Because it was easier for me, like this bureaucratic work. It was actually super easy for me, the job I was doing there.
But no stability.
No stability. They don't want to give me the permanent job.
Yeah.
I understand why they don't trust me that much back in the day or wherever. But then I get tired of that, and then I apply for the electrical school.
Okay, so that's a complete change of career. You've
It was complete change,
Yeah.
but I know like, as a foreigner, it will be way easier to get some work who has to do something with physical.
Okay, so that was the reason for your decision, that you thought that you'll always have work, or there'll always
Yeah.
be something to do.
Yeah, because I was applying all the time and don't get any responses. So
Okay.
that's realistic.
Yeah. Was it a difficult decision?
It was pretty difficult. Yeah, for sure I get a little depressed. Not tell anybody, but for sure it was a big change. But for me, I love that career, you know. It was pretty nice. I love that career.
So how does it feel now that you look back over those look back to 9 years ago? How do you feel about the decision that
I
you
feel
made?
I was pretty brave, and I made a good decision. I'm very happy with this career.
Okay. Any regrets at all about the decision you made?
Not really. No, because to get that kind of work, it would be pretty hard, almost impossible to reach that kind of level of finish.
Mm.
I know many people that they have a really nice careers and master degrees and PhD.
Yeah.
They don't get a job because it's not useful here, or just not going with the language or something like that.
Yeah.
It's never late. In this country, it's very good for that you always can change your career. And studies are for free, so why not take an advantage of that?
And that was Ricardo Gutierrez explaining how he decided to retrain as an electrician when he moved to Finland. Now, of course, changing careers is just one option, and not everyone has that choice. So to get a broader view of the Finnish jobs market, I'll go back to Aisha Manai, who we heard from earlier. Her role with Startup Refugees has given her a deep insight into the options that foreigners have, and also she is a Finn with a non-Finnish sounding name, so also has first-hand experience herself of the discrimination that many people face.
Well, one very important thing to understand is that the Finnish job market is made of small companies. Finland is a country of small businesses. I think it's 96% of Finnish companies employ less than 10 people. So that already tells a lot when you're looking for work, and when there's a small company with a small amount of staff, they usually want to hire people who are like themselves. Because when it's a big company, you have thousands of employees, it's actually easier to take in a person who comes from a so-called different background, because they can sort of, okay, there's so many people, they'll blend in somehow. But if it's a very small community, people who have, maybe they went to high school together, or who knows what the like sort of situation and the social bonds between these people are, it's much tougher to try to enter and integrate into that group.
So it is a tough environment, as you've explained, but what kind of advice would you give to job seekers? What can they do to kind of improve their own chances?
The usual things, make sure that your CV, your cover letter, all of these are in order. There's plenty of help for that. Don't rely too much on ChatGPT. Get a mentor. Try and get a mentor, either on your own, on LinkedIn. If you follow people that you feel could help, they don't have to be a mentor for a year. You can ask them for coffee, or ask them if they could have a short call, and you can get some tips. Try to get them to introduce you to their professional networks. Use organizations like Startup Refugees, like The Shortcut, like spouse programs in different cities. If you are the spouse of an international employee in Finland, there are a lot of NGOs and organizations that are here to support. In addition to that, I feel bad saying this, but try again. You will have those days that you want to beat your head against the wall, and I think it's fine. Then you just beat your head against the wall, but then try to beat your head against the wall for 2-3 days and then get back at it, because there's no other way for it to happen than for you to just keep on trying. Mm-hmm. But while you're trying, use use the mentors, try to, participate in different events. I think it's cool that we have operators like Epicenter, and at least here in Helsinki, that organizes all sorts of events that people can go to. They're for free. They can meet new people. They can network. Finland is definitely, probably all countries are countries for networks, but Finland especially, that you have to know people. And I think for introverts, this is horrible. But then again, you can also try and join like online platforms and try to push yourself a bit out of your comfort zone.
Yeah. One thing I often hear from people when I speak about this subject with them is that the lack of a rejection letter hits so hard. They put so much effort into applying for the job, and they don't even get the rejection. It's just silence. They get nothing, not even replied to. I think that people coming here from abroad, that really affects them, and I think it hits their sort of motivation to try again, because it happens kind of quite regularly. Is that kind of a feature of the Finnish kind of recruitment system, of Finnish culture maybe? Is it something you just have to sort of get used to?
Unfortunately, it is, and I don't think we should get used to that. I think we have to talk about it and change it. I can say, from having been a job seeker many times, that I've had that happen even when I've been in the interview, even when I've been in the final 3, and then I get an email that tells me who the person was that was hired, but no one contacted me to tell me hey, thanks, we went through this 2-month process, maybe we'll give you some feedback. It is infuriating, and this is something that employers need to step up in. Yeah. And they need to step up their game. And at Startup Refugees, well, we're not recruiting people all the time, I mean, for our own staff, but when we do, we really make an effort into contacting the people, explaining what the reason was that they weren't invited for an interview, and if they are interviewed and not chosen, we have that feedback talk. This is crucially important. If you don't have the resources for this, maybe you don't even have the resource to employ a person.
Yeah, it's cold, isn't it? I mean, to go through a 2-month recruitment process and to not even be worthy of a rejection. Yes.
It is absolutely heartbreaking, actually. It makes you doubt your professional identity. Yeah. Really, I went through psychological testing and everything, and then no one is contacting me. What is happening? Yeah. It's not very good for your self-esteem. And I know that many employers will say, but hey, we get 400 emails, we don't have time to go. Okay, if you don't have the time, at least send an email. Hey, due to having so many applications. We regret to inform that we don't have the time to give everyone personal feedback, but we appreciate the something.
Yeah.
Like that already makes the job seeker feel like they were at least on some level heard and seen.
Now, there was another report published this week that also caught people's attention. It was a survey by the unemployment fund YTK of their members, and it found that fully 68% said that their current job was found through so-called hidden methods. Now, this means that the job was never publicly advertised, but instead the role was filled by other means, such as via an open application sent to the company or an internship. However, the most common route was via personal networks, with 1/3 of the 18,000 respondents saying the first step towards securing their job was a personal recommendation. So I spoke with Auli Hanninen, CEO of the unemployment fund YTK, to hear a bit more about how people find these so-called hidden jobs.
It's by networking. It's by former colleagues. It's from the company itself, if you know someone from there, and they are. LinkedIn is a very good place to advertise yourself and tell about your skills and so on, and so the employers can find you there.
Okay.
But you have to be active there.
Yeah. And what do you think that the results of the survey, what does it sort of tell us about Finland or Finland's job market? Would it be fair to say that Finland is kind of, it's who you know?
I think so. And I don't know if that's a good thing. But it's just like that, I think.
So this idea that it's who you know in Finland, not necessarily what you know, does support the findings of Aklad Ahmad's study into name-based discrimination. Now, I invited Aklad onto the show this week, but unfortunately he was travelling. He did, however, answer some of my questions via email. The first one I asked him was if the level of discrimination against immigrant applicants of non-European origin is more common in Finland than it is in other European countries. He replied that based on his research it was, possibly because Finland has a relatively short history of immigration, but that this may decrease over time as Finnish society adjusts to what he termed the new socio-cultural reality. Now, I should mention at this point that Aklad's research study was a follow-up to a very similar study carried out in 2016. When comparing the two, it's clear that the situation is improving, albeit quite slowly, for people of a foreign background in terms of being called for interviews. So I asked Aklad what he thinks needs to happen for this trend to continue. He replied, and I am quoting him directly here, that recognizing immigration as an irreversible reality for Finnish society is the first essential step on the path to better integration and societal inclusion of immigrants. Such recognition, along with viewing immigrants as valuable contributors to society rather than as threats, can help shift societal attitudes and create an environment where discrimination is less tolerated and inclusivity becomes the norm. He concluded by saying that the societal dimension remains the most important factor in fostering a change in attitudes towards immigrants. So with all that in mind, I asked Aisha Manai for her take on what those in power might do.
The biggest would be that when governmental officials and politicians, some of them at least, are saying that, oh, we need more international people to work in Finland and we need international talents and we need to build these pipelines and make the processes better and da-da-da-da-da. Also practice what you preach. I would very much like to see these different ministries, for example, hire people from an international background. Yes, I understand that they have their certain whatever requirements that they need, but, be the change. Like, stop talking and actually do something. I would very much love to see people, for example, working for the Ministry of
Employment.
Yes, for the Ministry of Employment, that they would actually employ people from an international background, because they're the ones like spearheading the talk.
And that was Aisha Manai, CEO of Startup Refugees. So, lastly, before I move on from this section, I would like to remind you of our new series, which is called Ask Us Anything. So, if there's a question on your mind about Finland, or the Finnish news, or Finnish society, you can ask us by sending a message or a voice note via WhatsApp to +358 44 421 0909. You can also email the show, allpointsnorth@yle.fi. Once you've asked the question, we'll go and find the answer. And now for a quick roundup of what's been making the headlines in Finland this week. And we start with foreign policy news, as an announcement by US President Donald Trump that the United States plans to order 40 new icebreakers to supplement its aging fleet was noted with interest in Finland. Finnish Foreign Minister Elina Valtonen said she spoke with her US counterpart, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, about a possible cooperation between the two countries, as Finland is a major player in the icebreaker industry. And staying with foreign policy, Finnish Prime Minister Petteri Orpo said this week that the US President's rhetoric on Greenland was to be expected, but he also reaffirmed Finland's support for ensuring that the region remains a part of Denmark. In economic news this week, the number of new passenger cars sold in Finland last year sank to its lowest level since the recession of the mid-1990s. A report by the Finnish Transport and Communications Agency Traficom revealed that just over 74,000 passenger cars were registered in Finland during 2024, a significant drop from the regular pre-COVID figure of over 100,000 per year. And a survey commissioned by the Finnish Media Federation found that the social media platform TikTok was the most important news source for Finnish teenagers in 2023. The survey found that 40% of young Finns aged 13 to 18 considered the video-based platform to be their primary source of news. And finally, the possibility of travelling by train from Finland to Sweden and on to the rest of Europe moved one step closer this week when a 20-kilometre section of the line between Finnish Lapland and northern Sweden was electrified. Finland's Transport Ministry is now investigating the possibility of establishing a passenger train connection from northern Finland into Sweden via the border towns of Tornio and Haparanda.
You can join the conversation too. We want to hear what's on your mind. Just leave us a voice note or text on WhatsApp. Our number is +358 44 421 0909.
And that's about all we have time for this week. But before we go, I'd just like to mention that Finland's biggest documentary film festival, DocPoint, takes place in Helsinki next week from the 4th to the 9th of February. And of course, our own streaming platform, Yle Areena, has some great documentaries to choose from, including the very topical TikTok effect, which explores the extreme lengths that some users go to in order to get more engagement in that never-ending battle for likes and followers. And so lastly, I'd like to say a big thanks to my audio engineer today, Juha Hjelm, for putting the show together. And to you, of course, our audience, for listening to and supporting All Points North. Egan and Zina will be back next week with tips on how to save money during this economically challenging time. In the meantime, have a great week.